Hey there, everyone. It's Jody Sutter of the Sutter Company, and it's a Just Ask Jody Live. It's my monthly LinkedIn Live series where I have folks come and join me for a productive 30-minute chat about issues around business development. We've got a great guest today, and we're going to be talking about strategic positioning and how it can lead to more new business, which is really the end goal, of course, certainly as far as I'm concerned. But first, I just wanted to mention to y'all who are here with us live today or watching the recording, if you are watching it sometime between now and November 29th, 2023, I wanted to let you know that I'm going to be offering again an annual masterclass in planning for new business. So look, it's Q4 2023 as of the recording of this LinkedIn Live. And it's the time when we start thinking about our annual plans. And it's not always easy. It can be very time consuming. And look, what's even worse is that sometimes you guys end up, when I say you guys, I also mean me, because this has happened to me before too. We end up with a plan that has required a lot of time and effort, and then it doesn't get done. It sits in that folder on a server, and you go right back to business as usual. So I really want to help you this year create an easier plan and one that's going to be more likely to get done. So if you go to my website, you can go to thesuttercompany.com and you can see the banner at the very top. You can click there for more information or go right to this URL here on the graphic that Megan put up, thesuttercompany.com/new-business-blueprint. We got an early bird pricing going on right now for just $3.95, and that won't last for long. So take advantage of it now. Okay, that's my plug. Now I want to welcome my friend and my guest, Katie Keating. So let me tell you a little bit about Katie. There she is. So Katie is the co-chief creative officer and co-founder of Fancy. And Fancy is a 100% women-owned, strategically minded, and creatively driven agency dedicated to elevating what's important to women, including smashing stigmas and breaking down taboos that have kept normal parts of women's everyday life surrounded by secrecy and shadows. I'm going to have you talk a little bit, Katie, about your background, but she is a large agency veteran. She and Erica, her partner. And but I think what you could also hear in the introduction that I just read, which was, of course, a bio that Katie supplied me. Thank you very much for that. You can already hear this, our conversation zeroing in on the topic of the day, which is a really strong positioning and a point of view on how that helps. So hi, Katie. I'm going to shut up for a moment and say hello. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me. It's fun. I've never gone live before, so
yeah, it's just like the Today Show, except a slightly smaller audience, just slightly. Which, by the way, for all you folks who are joining us today, please do add comments and questions. I think this is a really big question for a lot of agencies, certainly the ones that I work with. How do we position ourselves? And then if we position ourselves, will that limit us in some way? And so maybe, Katie, in your own words, I know I just read some of your own words, but tell us a little bit more about how you and Erica partnered Fancy and why, maybe the bigger question there.
Well, our sort of origin story is kind of a windy path that does intersect with the way that we've developed our positioning over the last 12 years. It's hard to believe it's been 12 years.
That is amazing. Yeah.
So when we started the agency, it was right when the 3% conference first, came on the scene, and they had that statistic that said only 3% of creative directors were women. And I mean, Erica and I were gobsmacked. We couldn't even believe it because at the time we were working both on beauty accounts, and there are a lot of women in that section of the agency. But like when we kind of put our heads up from our computers for a second and looked around, we realized that was really true. And that where were the women creative directors? Where were the senior level creative directors? Where were the women who were aging? And I was 40 when we started the agency, and Erica was a little bit older. And we realized that our own days were going to be numbered. at these big ad agencies, because I don't think it's a secret about ageism in the industry, especially if you're a woman. And so we decided that we knew we were starting an agency because of some other stuff. And we were really thinking about, well, what is the kind of agency that we want to be? And do we want to be just like another cool creative led agency? Not really. There's a million of them. How are we going to differentiate ourselves? So we thought about like, well, we could be an agency for women, but we looked around and we kind of weren't super impressed by anybody who was really, having that as their niche, like women. And we also thought like, ugh, we don't really want to do just like a bunch of shampoo and tampons. Like that didn't seem really right either, because, we hadn't really seen any good work in those categories. Right. And then that's when we kind of like woke up a little bit and we thought, no, actually, that's exactly why we need to start this agency, because women haven't been, as consumers, women haven't been treated properly by ad agencies. They haven't been communicated to in a way that was interesting or relevant or motivating to them as people or consumers. So we thought, okay, well, we'll do that, and we'll have that be our focus. And as we kind of kept working on that, we realized we had this, not only a knack and a talent for kind of going to the places that other people or other agencies wouldn't go, but that we really enjoyed it. We enjoyed working on the products and brands that other agencies, at a big agency, you would be like really mad if you ended up placed in these departments. Yeah. And we thought, well, that's ridiculous, because there are all these aspects of women's lives that are completely normal that so many of us go through. Well, I mean, if you take something like menstruation or menopause, or, something that like biologically, just about all of us go through, all women go through. That's one thing. And then there's other things that just are a product of aging, and there's incontinence, and there's, hearing loss, and there's, things that have to do with that. And then there's, issues of
retirement and like
finance. Oh my God. Like, talk about something we are not allowed to talk about. We're raised as women that like, that's not polite, and you don't talk about it at the dinner table and all that kind of thing. So we decided to really like even focus farther on being the agency that really is like sets out to tackle taboos and normalize the normal in terms of women's lives. And we believe that those brands deserve really good, high quality work from an agency that's not afraid to push that client into a place that might be uncomfortable for them.
And you guys had, when you're doing your big agency days, you had done beautiful work for cosmetics and personal care brands, but probably the work that put, I hope this is not like inaccurate, but probably the work that really put Fancy on the map was your work for Lion's Den, which is a retailer of sex toys, among other things, but primarily, all right. Yes. And you did this beautiful work and over the years, and it's, that's sort of that sort of got you some recognition for not just the fact that it was taboo or considered or had been considered taboo, but because it was great work. Yeah. Insightful, beautiful work.
Yes. Thank you. That Lion's Den is the gift that keeps on giving. It's a really long-term relationship, and the work is great, and everybody wants to work on it, from directors and that's stuff wonderful. to creatives and strategists. It's like the thing everyone wants to do at the agency.
So bringing that back to business development, I think, what you've painted is a really great composite of what has been, as you said, a 12-year journey. I would love to hear a little bit of even some of the more uncomfortable points when you decided, well, this is what we're going to make a commitment to women and around these topics. And then what? Because of course that informs your business development. But I think a lot of agencies I work with, they're like, okay, great. But then what? What do we do? How does that limit us? What happens during the period when we're getting that message out there? Love to hear a little bit more about how you approach that.
So I'm trying, are you talking about like kind of the thought leadership and that sort of stuff that we do.
Yeah, that and yeah, specifically sort of that moment you were like, we are going to focus on women and we're not going to be afraid to touch taboo topics because it's important. And then how do you get the message out there?
Right. So, you know, Lions Den did get us a lot of attention. So we then did do a lot of podcasts and a lot of speaking engagements and things to talk about that. But that really only got us so far. We can't just talk about Lions Den for, I mean, I could talk about Lions Den forever, but other people might get bored. So, and we do a lot more. We also like distinctly did not want to be the sex toy agency either. That, you know, we wanted to show that we had, you know, this ability with other forms of taboo things. So we did in a few years ago, we've done this twice. We've done two kind of very robust surveys. And the first one we did was about women over 40 and how do they feel about advertising and marketing? Because we know that women will, first of all, aging is a taboo. If you're a woman in America, you know this. And that, so we wanted to do that. The second survey we did was all about taboo topics and the marketing and purchase experience of taboo products and services. So once we ended up with a lot of data from these surveys, we sort of replicated the same thing in both surveys. So I'll just kind of tell you what we did. We got a ton of information back, and we wrote an executive summary of all the research. And you know, we're an ad agency, so we made it look really good, and you know, something that people would want to download and want to read. It wasn't just a dense white paper. We then took that information and parceled it into 12 different months worth of kind of themes.
Smart. So it wasn't just a one shot and like, I hope we have something to talk about this month, but 6 months from now.
No, we really, because we're a really small agency, and we had to have something that kind of could get rolling, and that we just kind of, not autopilot because it's work to do this stuff, but we just kind of knew what was coming. So, and we have a formula. And so we every month now we have 2 different blogs, comes out twice a month. And then each of those blogs we take and divide up into a bunch of LinkedIn posts. We have a newsletter that we send out, because also we all know that not everybody is going to connect with all of your stuff. I mean, I'm lucky if I always open Jody's emails.
Oh, well, everybody. And I just going to say, I just Mutual Admiration Society. I just my newsletter today, and of course I read it from Fancy.
But we know that people aren't going to see everything. So we have to have a lot of stuff. But by having these blogs, we have all the information. We're able to cut it down into, you know, more bite-sized pieces. We have long form LinkedIns. We have short form LinkedIns. We were on Twitter for a while, but for us, that's not where our people live in. Also Twitter and all of that, X. We're not into it anymore. We don't really do that, but we find LinkedIn to be very helpful. Very helpful for us. And then, you know, when it gets to be kind of towards the end of the year, we think about what's the next survey and what are the things that we can be thinking about that our clients are really going to find helpful in their lives, in their jobs.
So really that means that's, I mean, again, not to diminish what sort of the operation you've put in place and the stuff you do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, but really you're sitting down once a year and saying, based on how we are still positioned, what do we want our big sort of that big chunk of thought leadership to be about this year? And then sort of, again, not to diminish the work, put the work in, do the research, and then you have all this stuff to all these ways you can support it. I think that's great.
Right. It's just very good to not have to be. I think the difference that we did with the latest survey and the first survey was we didn't map anything out in advance on the first survey. So every month we were like, oh my God, what am I going to write about now? we have a million wonderful facts, and it was great and we could do it. But in this case, we had everything mapped out in advance. So we know that like we happen to be in the sexual pleasure month right now. But like we've been through the finance month and we've been through the thing. So we know in advance, and, writers can be thinking about, what are we going to say about hearing loss next month, that kind of thing.
That's a really interesting thing. And I think that can also help a lot is if you sort of got your big theme, and then they're almost like hacks. That's okay. Well, let's divide that up into those monthly things. Like what are those monthly sub themes or complementary themes, like sexual health and aging and whatever they might be. And then, or even, well, still October, right? So like breast cancer month, it's like, it's sort of for an agency like yours. I'm not sure you're probably doing stuff for that. I'm making an assumption, but you're sort of handed an opportunity on a platter because because the general world, the zeitgeist is taking care of it for you. And you just have to then sort of tag on to it, which I think could be really helpful for agencies.
Well, and I think that that's a really good point that you bring up too, is that because we have the rest of it kind of, rolling and under control, and we're not having to freak out about it. When something happens in the world, we do have the brain space to respond to it, when Roe v. Wade was overturned, like we had the opportunity, in our own, workload and kind of thought leadership and positioning space to, articulate our point of view on that situation and put it out there in a way that we weren't just that we weren't like overwhelmed and not sure how that would fit in to everything.
Or even reacting in a one-off kind of way, right?
Right.
Because you felt like you're a women-owned agency and you had to. It fit beautifully into your larger mission and what you provide.
Yes.
So as you started, and I know this has evolved over time, what was it like? I assume that probably you didn't like turn on the switch and throw out all this great content and then, spend all your time fielding inquiries from clients who are trying to give you money. What was that journey like between getting that sort of point of view out there and seeing some business come in as a result of it?
It's funny. So for the over 40 stuff, we had a lot of great response from people and from, brand leaders and especially if they happened to be, that brand leader happened to be a woman who was over 40. They responded as human beings first. And they were like, yes, this is a terrific idea. Totally. And then you'd like watch the wheels turn in the brain and they'd be like, but don't make it your whole business. We're not really sure because we had asked them, like, should we be an agency for women over 40? And the end result of those conversations were, don't make it your whole business, because there's not enough business. True. Probably it's a really good thing that we didn't make that our whole focus, because they weren't really ready. People weren't, they were too afraid of alienating a younger audience. But it did help them understand kind of our point of view, the way we looked at the world, the way we thought about women. And then now with where we've sort of really kind of gone full force into this tackling taboo area, I think, though not every client that we have is in that world, they appreciate the way that we don't back down from a challenge. We aren't afraid to work on some kind of, unusual products for the industry. So even if their product isn't something that might traditionally be considered taboo, chances are that people have encountered the content that we put out and appreciate it and know that we can do good work. And then, related to that is there's so much taboo surrounding women that we often can find an angle that is taboo about the product. or
And I
service.
think for a lot of marketers, something that's taboo also has for some people has an appeal. Just we want to do
Yeah.
things that we shouldn't or can't do like naturally. And
Yeah.
I also love that how you evolved that, because it means that you've added some flexibility into that positioning. It is not just that rigid women over 40. And you also potentially can attract marketers who say, as you just said, look, our product isn't traditionally thought of as a taboo product, but we want some of that edge. We want what
Yeah.
you do for we want a little bit of that element of what you did for Lion's Den. And I think that's really interesting.
And I think that that comes from, our deep appreciation of the consumer and of women in
Yeah.
general, and bringing that knowledge and the way a product can integrate into a woman's life
Yeah.
in a way that is maybe kind of an unusual or not
Mhm.
an atypical way as far as advertising is concerned. Might be very normal for her, but
Yeah.
not normal in terms of how advertising treats her.
So in terms of the clients that you welcome in, as well as ones that maybe you don't, do you find that you are ever in a position to turn down business by saying you just don't really fit what you don't fit into the culture of our agency, or you don't really fit into our specialization? Is that something that you ever find yourself doing?
I mean, we have,
Hard, right? Oh, you
we
have.
we
Okay,
have,
cool.
but it has to be something that we just generally just have a hard line on.
Okay. Mhm.
There's things like, we are not the right agency for Smith and Wesson, or we are
Right.
not the right agency for big tobacco. We are not like,
Yeah.
those are the things that it's funny. Somebody did talk to me about it never went anywhere, because it wouldn't have, but said to me, well, I have this person that I know who works for Reynolds or Philip Morris or one of those places, and that's a taboo. And that's really
Yeah.
where the positioning, we're like, yes, but no.
But
Like,
yeah.
we're not doing
Yeah.
that. But we don't turn down work just because it's not a taboo. We just
Yeah.
turn down work that we just
Okay.
are don't believe we should be lending our talents to promoting.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've got this great thought leadership engine going, this great content engine going. What else over time have you added? And I guess one of the things I'm thinking about, again, thinking about when agencies come to me and they're like, here's what Eric has joined us, as well as Nora. I don't know if Nora's still around, but hey, Nora, it's great to see you. Okay, so a lot of agencies will say, like, you know what, like agency founders like you, we founded our agency because we really want to do this kind of work. We did not get into this to do business development. Like, we into our network when we need to, but do not make us make a do cold outreach or warm calls or whatever we want to call them. How has a content led business development program lent itself to other new business tactics? Like, do you do outreach? Do you use it for your referrals? Or are there things that you just say, like, we're not going to do it because we're not
Uh,
gonna.
no, I mean, geez, I'd love to be in the position where the content was so good that, like, people were just making the phone ring off the hook. I But it does make it very clear who I should be reaching out to.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah, I love
part
that.
is great. And sometimes I will send an article that I've written or a blog post. I find that it's a little more effective if I can send an article I've written for somebody else, like a Forbes
Yeah.
article or something, to
Yeah.
a potential client, and say, listen, I think this is really valuable for your business, and this point of view that I have on women and something like could be, you
Mhm.
might enjoy this. Let's have a conversation. I think that's, in terms of the outreach, that's the
Yeah.
best that it's
And
been.
I imagine those tactics don't you probably don't hit it out of the park every time. You probably don't get a reply every time. I'm saying that purely from personal experience, but
Mhm.
sometimes you do. And
Yeah.
usually what I find, again, for myself, for agencies like yours, you get enough of those that for a small agency especially, it can be very effective at filling that pipeline, especially the long-term nurture. And I'd
Mhm.
love, has that been the case for you guys?
Yes. I mean, there are people that we talk to a lot. Part of this is we end up connecting with people who may not have any need at all right now, but they
Yeah.
appreciate, we sort of become fast
Yeah.
friends immediately because we have this shared desire to, you know, change the world for women.
Yes.
And then when the time is right, we're already pretty integrated into their, not deeply integrated into their business, but we know enough because we've been in actually really I can't think of the this is authentic
Yeah.
like true communication with them because we actually care. It's not
Yeah.
simply like an outreach to drum up business all the time. We
Yeah.
care about the
So
business.
you're sort of on a mental short list almost, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think so.
Interesting. I think that's great. How long in general, this might be a hard thing to answer, but how long in general do you find those types of relationships get nurtured before you get that call or email that says, today's the day, we've got something we want to talk to you about?
I mean, it doesn't, how long does it take to write a song? I don't know.
Right? How long is
You
a
could be
piece of string?
inspired
Right.
and it works today
Yeah.
or there's people that we've been, talking with back and forth for years, but
Yeah.
it becomes less because it's not really like a silly thing at that point after you've been talking to somebody for years, assuming that there's a back and forth and they're writing
Right.
back to you,
Yeah.
you're just kind of, talking because you actually care, and
Yes.
then
Yeah.
at some point they're like, now's the time. So,
Yeah.
but I'd say it's at least 6 months,
Because I
really.
find
I
that's
mean,
that I would, yeah, that's what my experience, like 6 to 18, sometimes
yeah,
24 months.
yeah,
So sometimes I find myself managing those expectations a lot. Because like, well, we tried it for 6 months and nothing happened. Or, I haven't heard back from that person. And it can be a hard thing to get used to if you haven't done a lot of business, if you're, again, agency owner, agency creative, who hasn't done a lot of business development, this feeling of like, well, how long is it going to take before I can convert them? And sometimes it takes a long time, which I know when one is looking at a weaker pipeline, that can be a hard thing
yeah,
to realize, but better to start nurturing now. Yeah. And
yeah.
and in the long term, your pipeline's going to be really healthy. Um, so what is, if there was other things, well, maybe I was going to say, what would you do differently if you had to, um, no 6-minute ads in biz dev? Nora says, absolutely. I know. I wish I could promise that. I don't know, Nora, our businesses would probably be like through the roof, but we'd probably have a lot of people. We'd have a lot of people filling our pipeline and then probably a lot of people leaving as well, because by the 7th minute, when your abs aren't like rock solid, you're like, well, why did I pay all this money to that expert? It takes time. And I think for me, my approach is like the more you can do things that fit your mission, that fit your personality, and are willing to commit to the long term, then the more it is going to be successful. Yeah. So
Yeah, and if it's
how do you, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
sorry. I was just going to say, and if it's really is true, if it's not a positioning that you just made up because you thought there was a gap there in the
Hmm.
marketplace, and so you're
Yeah.
like, well, I'm going to be the, whatever agency is missing in the world,
Yeah.
but it's really comes from a place of real truth of what your agency actually is all about. Like we didn't
Yeah.
invent like let's be a taboo agency because there isn't one now. We realized that was
Yeah.
the kind of work that we were most excited about of all the work that we were doing. And we thought, well, let's do more of this work.
Yeah.
So
And it was
it
probably the
feels
work.
less like work.
And it's probably the work that you get the best results for your clients, because
Yeah.
you're happy about it and your clients are happy about it. And yeah, so it makes a very compelling value proposition. And to go back a little bit to what we were saying before too, I find that when agencies like yours embrace that thing that they really believe in, that statement or set of messages that they really believe in, then some of the discomfort that can be felt around introducing yourself to a complete stranger is mitigated a bit, because you can go up to them with that conviction about, like, here's what we love to do. We know it's really effective. And if it's not of interest to you, Ms. Stranger, that's cool. Like, let's chat about the weather instead, or I'm going to move on to the next person because I know there are people out there who need to hear this. I think it makes it a lot easier for some of those hesitant business developers to get out there and feel comfortable.
Yeah.
That's what I find. Yeah. So how, it's getting to be the end of 2023. Have you sat down and had your, like, what are we doing next year conversation?
Not really. I mean, we
Okay.
need to.
No pressure.
It's on the list. It's not you know, this particular batch of stuff we didn't release until the summer or
Yeah.
late spring. So we have a little time before figuring out what the next 12 months are going to
Good.
look like. So I
And just
don't
also
know.
a really quick question, because I think we're actually a little over the half-hour mark, but just a really quick question. You invested in an outside resource to help you do the research.
Yes.
That's correct? And is that
Yes.
something that helped?
Yes.
Mhm.
I'll give her a plug. Susan
Okay.
Beyer from Audience Audit. She
Who's actually going to be a guest in a couple of months, also, full
oh,
disclosure, but yeah.
she's great. Her company is great. And yes, I mean, we are a creative agency. We are not a research firm. And, you know, we
Mhm.
have strategists and we have that kind of stuff, but she designed the survey. She made this, I'm sure she'll talk to you about it. It's this dashboard where you can like slice up all the data in a million different ways, which is really helpful for us to then have.
Yeah.
And we can look at different segments of our audience and see how they respond to different things. And does this group of women respond differently to the purchase of cannabis differently than this other group, and does age affect it, like all kinds of things.
Interesting.
So it was really helpful to have her have that and analyze the data so that then we could write a bunch of really
Right.
compelling things that are a little
Yeah.
more kind of consumer friendly,
Yeah.
you know.
And that may not be for every agency. And without going into details, I know it's not an insignificant number, but I think for agencies who, again, have made that commitment to what they do the most successfully and who that audience is that they serve, then an investment like that can really go so far. Because as Katie said, it means that you're not doing it yourself, and it is proprietary. It is information that only Fancy has an audience audit, but for Fancy.
Mhm.
And it's stuff that you can use to talk to the people who you really want to talk to and who will find that information valuable.
Yeah.
Um, Katie, thank you so much. Is there anything else that you're dying to tell or reassure other agency owners who might be watching this about how your approach has worked well for you and what they might want to do?
No, I think we've covered a lot of things that I kind of wish that I had watched a live like this 5 years ago and didn't
Yeah,
have to kind of figure it out on our own. But I think that's it.
that
That's
is
really
so
how
good.
we do it, and then that gets us invited to speak places and gets us invited on podcasts and on live
Yeah,
things like this.
exactly. I can't promise that there are a lot of your potential clients out there, but hopefully there are lots of agency owners and agency leaders who are here. I just thought a couple of quick comments. Noelle Johnson said she really appreciated this. She wish she could have hopped on earlier. It'll be available as a recording like 5 minutes after we end this. So come on back to the event page. And Megan Hardy, wow, Adam Levine and Matt Kasendorf, thank you guys for tuning in. And thank you, Katie. It was so nice to see
Sure.
you and to talk to you. I just love watching you guys, watching you develop your point of view. And I also read your newsletter too. So
Well,
anyway,
thank you.
we'll have you back on again. Maybe, I don't know, we'll make it an annual thing. We'll see how everything's evolving and how's it going. So
Okay,
thank you so
great.
much.